It begins in silence, just the sound of dishes, running water, and a voice that should have been gentle. "If you're so smart, tell me this," he said. "If you had my money, what would you invest in?" He said it like a joke, like she was a joke, just a maid in a borrowed uniform wiping down a counter that was worth more than her yearly pay. But she didn't laugh. She looked up slowly, calm, steady, like she had been waiting for the moment he opened his mouth. And she said, "Sell everything connected to Harbor Point, before Tuesday, at 9:17 in the morning, not 9 o'clock, not 9:30, 9:17. He froze, because the way she said it wasn't guessing, it was knowing. And this is where everything begins to unravel. Before we go deeper, take a second. Tell me where you are watching from and what time it is there right now. I love seeing where everyone is tuning in. And if you're new here, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. Because this story, it gets darker, much darker. The kitchen was still half dark, early light just starting to push through the tall windows that overlooked Central Park. Morning news played softly from the TV on the wall, the anchor's voice muffled under the gentle hum of the espresso machine. He didn't look at her when he asked the question. He never did. Bennett Cole, the kind of man who made rooms bend around him without speaking, barefoot, sleeves rolled, scrolling his phone with the confidence of someone whose decisions shaped skylines, the kind of man who did not expect to be challenged. Nora Alvarez wiped down the marble counter, her movements steady and practiced. The sleeves of her cleaning uniform were rolled neatly to her elbows. No jewelry, no perfume, no sign of her life outside this apartment. Harbor Point is holding strong this quarter, Bennett said, more to himself than her. Might expand the Miami waterfront acquisition, maybe put pressure on East Shore. A half laugh. "What do you think, Nora? Too reckless?" It was a joke he'd told twice this week, the kind meant to remind both of them who held the world and who dusted it. But she didn't smile. She placed the cloth down slowly and turned just enough that he had to look at her. "Sell everything connected to Harbor Point before Tuesday," she said again, "at 9:17 in the morning." Bennett finally looked up. Why 9:17? Her eyes didn't move from his. "Because at 9:18, she said, "you will hear a name you thought was buried." Silence settled heavy between them. The espresso machine clicked. A car horn sounded faintly from the street 12 floors below. Somewhere in the apartment, the house manager's footsteps echoed across hardwood, but the kitchen was still, completely still. Bennett straightened a little, phone lowering from his hand. "What name?" he asked. Nora didn't blink. "Juniper." He went still, not in shock, not yet, but in recognition. Recognition mixed with something colder, something like memory. She turned back to her work, rinsing the cloth under warm water as though she had not just detonated something no one was supposed to know. Without looking at him, she said, "Your coffee is ready." Bennett didn't move. His heart beat once, hard. "Who told you that word?" he asked. Nora didn't answer. She simply wrung out the cloth, folded it, and placed it neatly beside the sink. "No one tells me anything," she said. "I pay attention, that's all." And she walked out of the kitchen, leaving Bennett alone in the half-light, with a word that had not been spoken in 4 years, echoing in a place he thought was untouchable. Juniper. A name that should not exist anymore. A name that was never supposed to surface again. A name that ruined men. He checked the time. 5:42 a.m. Tuesday was getting closer. And suddenly, 9:17 was not a coincidence. By the time the sun had fully risen over Manhattan, Bennett had convinced himself it meant nothing. A coincidence. A lucky guess. A maid trying to seem clever. He told himself these things while he got dressed, while he buttoned his shirt, while he tied the knot in his tie so precisely that it looked machine-made. But his hands weren't steady. He kept hearing her voice. At 9:18, you will hear a name you thought was buried. Juniper. He left the penthouse without looking back. The elevator ride to the private garage felt longer than usual. The driver greeted him, the doors closed, the city blurred past. But his mind wasn't in the SUV. It was in a boardroom 4 years ago, under fluorescent lights too bright for the things being discussed. A meeting that lasted 19 minutes and never appeared on the official calendar. A name whispered, then struck from every document, except one. He pushed the memory away. The studio was cold, cameras, cables, a stylist fixing his collar, producers checking their notes. Bennett knew how to perform calm. He'd been groomed for it. Money taught you how to hide what mattered. The anchor smiled at him, the kind of smile that came with teeth behind it. Always a pleasure, Mr. Cole. Ready to talk about the Miami expansion? Of course, he replied, voice smooth, steady. The lights came up. The camera light turned red. We're here with Bennett Cole, founder and majority shareholder of Cole Harbor Holdings, to talk about... He didn't hear the rest. He just watched the studio clock on the wall. 9:14 a.m. 9:15. 9:16. His breath slowed without meaning to. And before we get into projected housing growth, the anchor continued, her tone shifting just slightly, a new report surfaced this morning, an internal memo connected to an older project, something called Project Juniper. The world narrowed to a point. 9:17 a.m. The anchor leaned forward. Mr. Cole, do you have a comment? His pulse hit him all at once, a heavy, physical thud behind the ribs. Juniper was not public. Juniper was sealed. No one should know that word. Not reporters, not shareholders, not maids wiping down stone counters in quiet kitchens. He forced his face to stay still. I am not familiar with that term, he said, each word measured, but his silence after was just 1 second too long. The anchor saw it, the cameras saw it, the viewers saw it, and the stock market reacted first. The ticker at the bottom of the screen flickered. Harbor Point, red arrow, down. It was slow at first, then faster, like a thread being pulled that no one could stop. He felt his phone vibrating in his jacket again and again, a rising swarm of calls and messages, but he stayed seated, because walking out would look worse. 9:17 had passed, and now 9:18 was here. When the interview finally ended, he didn't speak to the producers, didn't speak to the driver, didn't answer a single call. He just sat in the back of the SUV, staring straight ahead, hands still, jaw locked. He had spent years burying Juniper, years making sure it never surfaced, and Nora Alvarez brought it back with one sentence, the maid who knew. He replayed her voice in his head. People like me know more than you think. The SUV turned down Fifth Avenue. The city outside looked the same. Everything else had changed. The apartment was quiet when he returned. Too quiet. The staff always kept it orderly, but this silence felt different, intentional, like the building itself was waiting to see what he would do. Nora was in the kitchen again, placing fresh linens in the cabinet above the sink. Her movements were unhurried, precise, the way someone moves when they know exactly how their day will unfold. Bennett stood in the doorway and watched her for a moment, not because of curiosity, but because, for the first time in years, he didn't know what was about to happen next. Nora, he said. She didn't turn around. The interview was interesting. She kept folding, one towel, then another. The markets adjusted more than expected, he continued. She rinsed her hands, dried them, and finally looked at him. You waited too long, she said softly. You should have sold before 9:17. He stepped closer. How did you know that would happen? She didn't step back. She didn't flinch. She just held his gaze. Because you were never meant to bury it, she said. Only to delay it. His jaw tightened. Do you know what Juniper is? Her expression didn't change, but something in her eyes did. A flicker, like memory. I know what it did, she said. He felt that. Juniper wasn't a project. Juniper was a wound. He exhaled slowly. You've worked here for 2 months. Before that, Midtown Tower Hotel. Before that, a cleaning service in Queens. Before that, she finished for him. Before that, finance student at City Tech, scholarship candidate, promising, until life changed. She said it without bitterness. Just fact. What changed? He asked. Nora looked down at her hands, as if the story lived in her palms. My mother got sick, she said. And when you're poor and someone gets sick, everything else stops. A pause. He felt something in his chest shift, almost imperceptible. And your father? He asked. She lifted her eyes again. I never met him. Something tightened there. Not pain, resilience. The kind a person doesn't talk about. The kind that builds itself out of necessity. Nora, he said carefully, how do you know about Juniper? For the first time since he met her, her voice was not calm. It was steady, but full. My mother used to clean houses in the Hamptons, she said. One estate in particular, a very large one, with a green library no one used, a bar cart no one touched, a study that locked from the inside. His pulse picked up. He knew the house, every hallway, every window, every locked room. She continued. People with power talk freely when they think the room is empty. But homes are never empty. Someone is always cleaning the glasses. He swallowed. What did she hear? Nora stepped closer. Not enough to challenge him, just enough to be undeniable. She heard everything, she said, and she wrote it down. Names, meetings, agreements, the kind that happen when you think the world belongs to you. His heart hit, harder this time. Nora didn't break eye contact. She kept the record, she said. She hid it in a place no one would look. Silence filled the kitchen again, but it wasn't quiet this time. It was heavy. He spoke, low. She had evidence. Nora nodded once. And let me guess, he said slowly. Someone wanted it gone. Nora's voice was almost a whisper. Someone thought they destroyed it. Another pause. But they were wrong. For the first time since sunrise, something resembling fear slid beneath Bennett's skin. Nora picked up her cleaning cloth. Your coffee is still warm, she said, turning away. But before she left the room, she added, You're running out of time. She walked out, leaving him standing in a home that suddenly didn't feel like his. Juniper wasn't resurfacing. It was coming back for him. Nora did not speak much. Most days she moved through the apartment like quiet air, cleaning, sorting, replacing, restoring, making sure that everything looked untouched, even as her hands passed over every surface. Bennett had never paid attention to the way she worked before. Now he watched her carefully. There was no hesitation in her movements, no wasted steps, no fear. She did not act like someone small. She acted like someone who had already survived something. He found her later in the laundry room, folding shirts with the same deliberate neatness as her words. The washing machine hummed low, steady. It filled the silence between them. You said my mother heard everything, Bennett said. I want you to be clear about what that means. Nora stacked a folded shirt, then another. It means there are always conversations when the doors are almost closed but not locked, she said. It means staff kitchens are close enough to dining rooms. It means hallway floors carry sound more than people think. He leaned against the doorframe, watching her hands. So you listened, he said. No, she answered. I learned to hear. He let that settle. You expect me to believe your mother kept records of business dealings that had nothing to do with her. She kept records of the way powerful people talk when they believe no one is listening, Nora said. She knew one day the truth would matter, even if she was not there to speak it. Something flickered behind her voice, not anger, not grief, something older, something shaped across years. Bennett stepped into the room. What happened to her? Nora's hands paused for the first time. "She died," she said. "Not fast, not quietly, and when she did, the world did not stop. It did not even blink." The next silence was heavier than the one before it. "You think I was part of that?" Bennett said. Nora folded the last shirt and placed it in the basket. "I think you were raised in a world where consequences happen to people who cannot afford lawyers," she said. "I think Juniper was designed to bury something, and I think burying something is never clean." He looked away. That was the first time he did that. She noticed. "You were not the architect," Nora said, "but you were there." Bennett inhaled slowly. "You said the record still exists," he said. "Where?" Nora did not look up from the laundry basket. "If I tell you, you will go after it alone," she said, "and you will lose, because you believe the threat is outside your inner circle." He waited. "But the threat is inside it," she finished. The hum of the washing machine seemed louder now. "You think someone close to me kept Juniper alive," Bennett said. Nora did not answer. She did not need to. Bennett's mind went instantly to one name, Carter Reed, his oldest friend, the man who sat beside him at every board meeting, the man who had been with him since the beginning. A memory surfaced, a closed-door argument in a parking garage, Carter saying, "Some things are better off forgotten." Bennett had dismissed it. Now he could not. Nora lifted the basket and stepped around him. The faint scent of detergent followed her as she passed. She stopped in the doorway. "You built your company believing you always had control," she said, "but control is not ownership, it is borrowed space, and the people who lent it to you are calling in their share." She walked out, leaving him alone again. This time the silence was not heavy. It was dangerous, because now he knew that Juniper was not a ghost from the past. It was alive, present, moving, and someone very close to him was feeding it. Manhattan looked polished that night. Glass towers reflecting glass towers, black cars sliding up curbs, velvet ropes parting for people who never had to wait in lines. The Tribeca Children's Oncology Gala was the kind of event where cameras flashed before names were spoken, where charity was another word for reputation management, where every smile had an angle. Bennett arrived with Sloane Parker on his arm. Sloane, sharp, immaculate, composed, every hair in place, every step measured, every glance calculated to land exactly where she intended. She had been the public half of his life for 2 years now. Some called her his fiancée, some called her his strategist. Both were true. She greeted donors, shook hands, laughed at things that weren't funny. Bennett noticed none of it. He scanned the room instead. Politicians, developers, lobbyists, names he had seen stamped on contracts, on foundations, on scandals disguised as philanthropy. And then, Councilman Tyrrell Grant. Grant was speaking with a cluster of investors near the balcony doors. When he turned and saw Bennett, the expression that crossed his face was small, quick, but unmistakable. Recognition, followed by concern, followed by the barest flicker of something like fear. Sloane squeezed Bennett's arm. "There you are," she murmured. "You're smiling with your eyes but not your mouth. Fix it before the photographers notice." He didn't reply. She followed his gaze. "Ty?" she asked lightly. "I didn't know he was attending tonight." He didn't answer that either. She looked up at him then, just long enough to register that something was wrong. But Sloane was trained in presentation. She would not question him here. They moved through the crowd. People greeted Bennett with warmth they reserved only for those whose signatures could move money. He nodded, responded, said polite things, but his eyes never left Grant. Eventually, Grant excused himself from his group and approached. "Bennett," he said, extending a hand. "Good to see you." His voice was smooth, too smooth. Bennett shook his hand. "Didn't know you'd be here," Bennett replied. Grant smiled. "Kids' health funding, always happy to show support." But his collar was damp, a small detail. A man who had either rushed or sweated. Sloane began a conversation. Donors, committee chairs, future ballot initiatives. But Bennett watched Grant's eyes. Grant wasn't looking at Bennett. He was looking past him, scanning, checking who might be listening. Then, a single careless detail. Grant's hand drifted to his jacket pocket, touching something there, then withdrawing it quickly, as though he realized he had done it in view. Just a second. But Nora had taught Bennett something. People reveal what matters when they think no one is paying attention. The music shifted. Applause rose. A speaker took the stage. Sloane leaned in. "We need to sit down for the donor address." But Bennett didn't move. Grant excused himself, heading toward the back hallway, the one marked for staff and deliveries. Bennett followed. He didn't rush, didn't call out. He simply walked, a quiet shadow through glitter and champagne. The hallway door closed behind Grant. Bennett reached it, rested his hand on the handle, listened. Just one voice, Grant's, low, breathing unevenly, speaking into a phone. "You told me this was buried," Grant hissed. "No, listen. If it's resurfacing now, he's not the problem. Someone inside is leaking. Someone close. Yes. Yes, I know who. I'm handling it." A pause. "No. He will not see the file. I'll make sure of it." Silence. Then footsteps. Bennett stepped back just before the door opened. Grant froze when he saw him, for one fraction of a second. The truth was naked in his eyes. Guilt, fear, recognition. But then the mask snapped back on. "Did you need something?" Grant asked. Bennett held his gaze. "Yes," he said quietly. "I need to know who you were talking to." Grant smiled and did not answer. They stood in the hallway, two men, one secret, and a word neither of them had spoken aloud. Juniper. Sloane called Bennett's name from the main hall. Her voice floated in through the music. Grant turned away first. He walked back toward the gala, toward lights and cameras and champagne and applause. Bennett didn't follow, because now he knew two things. Nora had not guessed, and the past was not resurfacing by accident. Someone was pushing it up from underneath. Someone who was close enough to touch everything he owned. The gala stretched into evening, but Bennett didn't remember any of it. The speeches, the applause, the photos, just noise. People spoke to him. He nodded. He smiled when expected. But his mind was in that hallway. Grant's voice, those words, "He will not see the file." By the time he returned to the penthouse, the city outside had gone quiet, the kind of quiet that feels intentional. The elevator opened into the private foyer. The lights were dim. The kitchen was clean, too clean, as though scrubbed to erase something unseen. On the counter beside his morning mug sat an envelope, white, unmarked, thin. He didn't need to open it to know who left it. Nora had been there. She no longer was. He picked up the envelope, slid his finger along the seal, and unfolded the single sheet inside. There were no greetings, no explanation, just one line. "Check the maintenance logs at the Fairchild Center. Sub-basement, door B. Do not tell Carter." The paper felt colder than the room. Carter Reed had been beside him since the first building permit, the first loan, the first sleepless night spent turning sketches into skyscrapers. A friend before a partner. Someone you didn't hide things from. Someone you didn't need to hide things from. Bennett read the line again. "Do not tell Carter." He exhaled. Slow. Something shifted under his ribs. Not panic, not anger, recognition. He had been wrong earlier. Juniper wasn't a wound. Juniper was a fault line, and it was starting to move. He set the paper down and walked to his office, the one room in the penthouse where the city couldn't distract him. Floor-to-ceiling glass, dark wood, one wall of screens still showing the markets. Harbor Point had stabilized, but lower than it should be, not fatal, but enough to ask questions, enough to make people nervous. He opened his laptop, accessed internal directories, cross-referenced permits, staffing, recent repairs, Fairchild Center, a medical research facility in Boston, one of Cole Harbor's most expensive philanthropic assets. Nothing unusual, nothing flagged, which meant the truth wouldn't be in the files. It would be in the place. He checked the time. 11:38 p.m. He didn't call Carter. He didn't call Sloan. He didn't call anyone. He walked back through the apartment, stopped at the doorway to the laundry room. The basket of folded shirts was gone. The counter was spotless. The room was empty. But it felt like she was still there, still watching, still waiting. He didn't know if she was protecting him or testing him. He took his coat. The elevator opened. The car waited. The driver straightened in the seat when Bennett entered. "Logan Airport," Bennett said. The driver nodded, shifted into gear. The worker hesitated. "Install orders came from New York." "From your office, sir." "My office?" "Yes," Mr. Reed signed off. "Carter." Bennett thanked him quietly, then waited until the man left. He stood alone in the humming corridor, the weight of the envelope heavy in his pocket. Then his phone vibrated. Unknown number. He answered without speaking. "Mr. Cole," Nora's voice said. "Don't let anyone know you're there." He took a slow breath. "You were right about the logs." "I know." "How?" "Because Carter is about to call you. He'll tell you Juniper is just rumor, that he can contain it. Don't let him." "There's something you should know before he does," she said, voice steady. "My mother worked for your family in Southampton, 18 years. She cleaned your father's study." Bennett's throat tightened. "What are you saying?" "She heard things, Bennett. She hid what she heard. She protected you without ever meeting you." The call cut for half a second, static hissing between words. "She hid a list," Nora continued. "It's still there, in the Green Library, inside a book your father never read, The Great Gatsby." He didn't speak. "Go there," she said, "before Carter does." The line went dead. Bennett stared at the phone, at his reflection in the black screen. Then he turned and started back toward the elevator. Above him, the security camera light blinked red, recording every step. As the elevator doors closed, he caught a glimpse through the small glass window. A man in a suit at the far end of the hall. Watching. Carter Reed. Their eyes met for half a second before the doors shut. The elevator rose. Boston fell away beneath him. He was already dialing the pilot. "Prepare the jet," he said. "We're going to Southampton." He ended the call and stared out at the skyline. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about profit or loss. He was thinking about survival. The flight back to New York was silent. No music, no conversation. Just the low hum of engines and the weight sitting behind Bennett's ribs. He sat with his hands folded, staring ahead, replaying every conversation he had ever had with Carter Reed. College dorm rooms, first office space above a laundromat, shared ramen nights planning skyscrapers. Carter was there long before the suits, the photographers, the boardrooms, which meant if Carter was involved in Juniper, the betrayal did not start today. The jet touched down at Teterboro just after midnight. The car was waiting. They drove east, over bridges, past dark trees, until the coastline appeared like a quiet secret beneath the moonlight. The Southampton estate looked unchanged. It always did. Perfect grass, shuttered windows. A house that held wealth the way a museum holds artifacts, untouched, preserved, curated to impress. The caretaker opened the door without surprise. "Welcome back, Mr. Cole." As if he had known Bennett was coming. Maybe he had. Bennett walked down the familiar hallway, past framed portraits of people who had never needed to explain themselves, past the staircase, through the sitting room, into the library. The walls were covered in green lacquer, the color deep and timeless. Shelves floor to ceiling, hundreds of books, but only one mattered. He walked to the center shelf, fourth row. A green leather spine with worn gold lettering. The Great Gatsby. The book his father displayed like a declaration, a story of ambition and ruin. Bennett pulled it out. The book was too light. He opened it, hollow. Inside was a manila folder and a single small brass key engraved with J2. His pulse pressed hard into his throat. He reached for the folder and stopped. The reflection in the window moved. Someone was behind him. He turned. Sloane stood in the doorway. Black coat, hair pinned back, expression unreadable. She stepped inside. "I knew you'd come here," she said. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Bennett said nothing. Sloane's eyes moved to the folder in his hand. "You can't open that alone," she said. "If you do, you'll destroy yourself, and everything your father built." She walked closer. "This doesn't have to come undone," she said softly. "We can control the narrative. We always have. You just need to." His phone buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times. Unknown number. He answered. No greeting. Just Nora's voice. Low, steady. "Don't let her touch that folder." Sloane froze, not outwardly, but behind her eyes, something tightened. Nora continued. "She's not here by chance. She didn't meet you by chance. Carter brought her into your life to manage you, to shape the story before it ever happened." Sloane's voice was quiet, measured. "Don't listen to her, Bennett." Nora spoke again. "Ask her who she was before she worked in PR." Sloane's jaw tensed. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. Bennett spoke for the first time. "Who were you?" Sloane didn't answer. Not right away. She didn't look afraid. She looked like someone selecting which truth to use. Finally, "I was hired," she said, "to protect you." Nora's voice sharpened in his ear. "No, she was hired to contain you." Sloane took one slow step forward. "Put the folder down, Bennett," she said softly. "Let me handle this. If you open that without me, you won't survive what's inside." Silence. Just the sound of the ocean outside the window. Bennett stood between 2 women, one who had shaped his public life, one who had shattered his private one. The folder felt heavy now, heavy with names, heavy with history, heavy with truth. Nora's voice returned, almost a whisper. "You're running out of time. He's already on his way." Sloane's expression didn't change, but her eyes flicked, just once, toward the front gate. The caretaker's voice echoed faintly through the house intercom. "Mr. Cole, there are federal agents here to see you." Sloane's gaze returned to his. "Give me the folder," she said. Bennett did not move. The house was silent, the kind of silence that comes before something breaks. The intercom crackled again, the caretaker's voice carrying down the hall like a warning. "Mr. Cole, they say it's urgent." The word urgent never meant good news in his world. The folder was still in Bennett's hand. Sloane was still standing in front of him, her expression calm enough to make calm feel dangerous. She didn't lunge for the folder. She didn't raise her voice. She simply waited. That was worse. "Nora told you they'd come," Sloane said quietly. "So think, Bennett. If Nora knew they were coming, how?" He didn't answer, because the question was sharp. Too sharp. It made him think of the envelope, the precision of her timing, the way she had spoken, not as someone guessing, but someone who had already seen the path unfold. The ocean wind pushed against the glass, a slow, hollow sound. Bennett glanced toward the window. He could hear distant voices outside now. Car doors, footsteps on gravel. Sloane stepped closer, soft, controlled. "If they take that folder," she said, "it will not be Carter who falls. It will be you. You know how this works." He did. Of course he did. In his world, the first person to speak controlled the story. The second person disappeared under it. But Nora's words lingered. "Do not let her touch it." "Nora has her own agenda," Sloane said, as if she heard the thought. "She always has. You think she came into your home by accident? You think she stood in your kitchen and said that name by chance?" Bennett felt something shift inside him, something he didn't want to name yet. The footsteps outside stopped. Someone rang the front bell. Once. Hard. The caretaker's voice again, closer now. "Mr. Cole, they're asking to come in." Sloane extended her hand. "Give me the folder." And then, from the hallway, "Nora Alvarez is requesting entry." The caretaker sounded confused, almost nervous. Sloane's eyes snapped toward the sound. Bennett turned toward the doorway just as Nora appeared there. No uniform now, just a simple dark coat, hair pulled back, face calm, gaze unwavering. For a moment, no one spoke. No one breathed. Nora's eyes moved to the folder, then to Sloane, then to Bennett. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't plead. She just said his name. Bennett. The way she said it stripped away the room, the house, the ocean, everything but the choice he had to make. Sloane took one step forward, still composed. "Don't let her manipulate you. She's here because she wants what's inside that folder to destroy you." Nora's gaze didn't waver. "I'm here because what's inside that folder will destroy someone," she said. "But it doesn't have to be you." The bell rang again, harder. Voices outside now, more urgent, more numerous. Bennett's grip tightened on the folder. He looked at Sloane. Ice, strategy, precision. He looked at Nora. Stillness, memory, something that looked like truth. Another knock, this one louder. Time was gone. He opened the folder. Pages slid open, thin from age, soft at the edges. Ink smudged in places, but legible. Names, dates, amounts, locations. A list of every person who had known about Juniper, and what they received for keeping it buried. He read the first name, then the second, then the third. His breath left him. On page 1. Carter Reed, on page 2. Sloane Parker, on page 3. His father. The room didn't move, but everything inside him did. Sloane didn't flinch. She didn't deny it. She only said softly, "You weren't supposed to find it alone." The front door shook under a fist. "NYPD and Federal Bureau of Investigation, open the door." Nora stepped closer. "Bennett," she said. Not urging, not commanding, just calling him back to himself. He looked at her, and for the first time, He understood why Nora had walked into his kitchen, why she had said Juniper, why she had warned him, not to destroy him, but to see whether he would destroy himself. The doorknob rattled, voices rising. Sloane's voice dropped to a whisper. "You give them that folder, and the name Cole dies tonight." Nora's voice. "You hide it, and you become the man who buried innocent lives to save his own." Not a choice, a reckoning. The front door began to open, and Bennett still hadn't moved. The front door swung open. Heavy boots, voices layered, flashlights slicing through the dark entry hall, the kind of movement that didn't ask permission. Federal agents entered the house with quiet efficiency, no shouting, no chaos, just inevitability. The caretaker stepped back, hands raised, eyes wide with apology. He didn't speak. Sloane didn't turn. She didn't need to. She had been expecting them. But Nora stepped forward, placing herself between Bennett and the approaching agents, not aggressively, not defensively, simply standing where they would have to see her first. Her presence had weight, not loud, not dramatic, just undeniable. One of the agents spoke. "Mr. Cole, we have questions regarding financial records related to Harbor Point development and a set of internal documents known as Project Juniper. We're requesting your cooperation." Bennett didn't answer. He was still staring at the names on the pages. Carter. Sloane. His father. The truth sat in his hands. Real. Heavy. Unforgiving. The agent waited. Sloane spoke first. "Of course he's willing to cooperate, but you don't have a warrant to seize private property tonight. You'll need to schedule a documented interview with counsel present." Her tone was flawless, measured, authoritative, legal without being confrontational. Sloane had always been good at speaking like consequences were just misunderstandings waiting to be corrected. The lead agent nodded slightly. "We're not here to seize anything. We're here to advise Mr. Cole that an investigation is active and to inform him that individuals close to him have already begun cooperating." The edges of the room sharpened. Bennett felt the shift before the words came. "Your Chief Operating Officer Carter Reed provided preliminary documentation this evening." Nora closed her eyes. Just once. Not surprise. Confirmation. Sloane didn't blink. "Carter is trying to protect the company," she said quietly. No performance, no spin. Just the truth she chose to give him. But Bennett heard what lived beneath it. "Protect the company, not protect you," the agent continued. "We'll need to ask you some questions tomorrow morning. We can escort you to your attorneys if you prefer." Bennett finally spoke. "No, I'll come on my own." The agent nodded once, respectfully, and signaled his team. They withdrew as efficiently as they entered. No handcuffs, no threats. Just the cold clock of consequences beginning to move. The door shut. Footsteps faded toward the driveway. Silence returned. But not the same silence as before. This one was waiting. Bennett looked at Sloane. She didn't look ashamed, or afraid, or angry. She looked tired. "I was brought into your life to keep Juniper away from you," she said. "Carter knew if you ever saw the truth, you'd tear the entire foundation down, and everything on top of it." Her voice was steady, too steady. "You think this company is yours. You think your legacy is yours. But you were born into a story that was already written." Bennett's hand tightened around the folder. "And you helped write it," he said. Sloane's expression didn't change. "I helped keep you safe from it." Nora took one quiet step forward. "No," she said. "You helped keep him blind." The two women faced each other now, not as rivals, but as opposites. Sloane, controlled, strategic, loyal to the structure. Nora, quiet, observant, loyal to the truth underneath it. Sloane's voice was barely more than breath. "You don't understand what happens if he chooses your path." Nora's was softer. "You don't understand what happens if he doesn't." The ocean wind pressed against the windows again. The house felt like it was holding its breath. Bennett lowered the folder, just slightly. The decision was starting to form, not complete, but real. Sloane saw it. Her composure cracked for the first time, not fully, not visibly. Just one small tremor at the corner of her mouth. She whispered, "Bennett, if you choose her, you will lose everything." Nora met his eyes. "If you choose her path," she said, "you already have." The house fell silent again. Not empty, full of the truth waiting to be chosen. The house felt colder now, not because of the ocean wind, but because the truth had finally stepped into the room and refused to leave. Bennett looked down at the folder again. One name kept pulling his eyes back. Not Carter, not Sloane. His father, the man who built the empire. The man Bennett had spent his entire life trying to impress, trying to live up to, trying not to disappoint. Nora spoke first. "My mother didn't just clean this house," she said softly. "She cleaned the rooms where your father held meetings no one was supposed to hear. She heard what he promised, who he paid, who he threatened, who he ruined." Sloane's eyes closed for a moment, just a moment. "She kept a record," Nora continued. "Not for money, not for revenge, for me, so I would know the truth about the world I was born into." Bennett swallowed. "And Juniper?" Nora met his gaze. "My mother was the whistleblower." The room did not move, but something inside Bennett did. "When she tried to come forward," Nora continued, "there were threats, lawsuits, smear campaigns, not against her ideas. Against her credibility, her character, her sanity. His father's methods, not unfamiliar, just never discussed. She lost her job, then her insurance, then her treatment. A steady breath. She didn't die because she was sick. She died because someone decided her truth cost too much." Sloane took a slow step forward, voice gentle. "Nora, your mother was in over her head. She didn't understand the scale, the implications." Nora didn't look at her. She understood exactly what she was doing. Silence. Not the kind that follows shock, the kind that follows recognition. Sloane tried again. "Bennett, listen to me. Your father didn't do this out of cruelty. He did it to protect the company, to protect your future, to protect you. Every family in this world has secrets," Nora finished. "Some families just call theirs strategy." Sloane's jaw tightened. "This isn't about morality, Bennett. This is about survival. Your father survived by making hard decisions." Nora's voice was quieter now, and those decisions killed people. The words hung there, held. Then Bennett spoke. "How long have you known?" His voice was low, controlled. He wasn't asking Nora. Sloane didn't look away. "From the beginning," she said. "And Carter?" he asked. "Longer than me," she said. The anger didn't hit all at once. It came slowly, like heat rising through ice. Sloane's voice gentled. "We were trying to protect you from inheriting blood you didn't spill." Nora finally looked at Bennett fully. "You have a choice now," she said. "To be the man they assumed you would become, or the man they were afraid you could be." Another knock, more forceful this time. "Mr. Cole, we need to speak with you. Now." Time was gone, but choice remained. The folder in his hand felt heavier than any deal he had ever made. He could close it, hand it to Sloane, walk upstairs, let Carter handle the investigation, keep the empire, or he could open the second page, the page marked "Recipients of Juniper Compensation, Secondary Beneficiaries." He unfolded it and saw a name he had not expected to see. Nora Alvarez. Amount $32,000. Purpose: medical debt relief. A stillness fell that didn't belong to the room. Bennett lifted his eyes to hers. Nora did not look away. "My mother didn't take the money," she said. "They paid it to the hospital under her name. She never knew. It was Carter's insurance plan, to make her look bought. Sloane closed her eyes, because that part was true. Nora's voice was steady. You're not choosing between me and Sloane. A pause. You're choosing between truth and the structure built to bury it. The front door began to open. Footsteps entered the foyer. Bennett still held the folder. But now, he finally knew what decision he was making. The footsteps echoed down the hallway. Slow, purposeful, no panic, no urgency. Whoever had entered the house already knew they belonged there. Bennett didn't turn. He didn't need to. He was still looking at Nora. Her eyes, steady, unflinching, held no desperation, no plea, no attempt to sway him. Just truth. Truth that didn't need to raise its voice. Sloane stood on the other side of him, close, familiar. The scent of her perfume, the one she chose for cameras and power, felt colder now. Nora has a cause, Sloane said, her tone soft. It was the voice she used when persuading senators, donors, CEOs. She wants to tear it all down because she believes suffering gives her the right to decide justice. Nora didn't react. And you, Sloane continued, turning slightly toward him, you have built a life out of structure, order, stability, out of protecting people who depended on you. Her voice lowered. It landed where it knew he felt. You didn't create this world, but you are the only one who can hold it together now. Nora spoke next. Or dismantle what never should have existed to begin with. The words were soft, but they struck harder. Voices grew louder near the hallway. A name was said, his name, firmly, professionally. Mr. Cole. Bennett still didn't look. Carter will ask you to sacrifice yourself, Nora said. Not because he needs to, because he believes you would, because he believes you were raised to. Sloane took a breath. And Nora will ask you to sacrifice everything your father gave you, the company, the legacy, the respect, your seat in every room that matters. Nora stepped forward. I am asking you to decide what kind of man you are. That was when Carter Reed stepped into the room. He didn't rush. He didn't look rattled. He didn't look guilty. He looked exactly the way he always looked with Bennett. Confident. In control. Ben, Carter said, his voice warm. Let's talk. Bennett said nothing. Carter smiled, just slightly. You found the folder, he said. Not a question, a conclusion. Sloane said nothing. Nora didn't move. Carter looked at the pages in Bennett's hand, then back at his face. There are things you were never meant to carry, Carter said. Things your father handled so you wouldn't have to. Nora watched him with the quiet of someone who had already heard every word years ago. Carter continued, gentle, almost affectionate. We can contain this. I'll take the blame. I'll resign. The narrative will be corporate mismanagement. An oversight I'll accept. You stay where you belong, at the top, untouched. It was a perfect offer, the kind that sounded like loyalty. But Bennett finally saw what lived under it. Not protection, control. Carter was the architect, the designer, the mathematician of consequences. If Bennett said yes, he would live, but he would never again be his own. Sloane was watching Carter, not with love, not with loyalty, with the calm obedience of someone who had long ago accepted the role she was assigned. Nora's voice was quiet. People like you believe power makes you safe. It doesn't. It just makes the fall louder. Carter didn't even look at her, because in his mind, she still didn't count. He stepped closer to Bennett, every movement slow, steady, familiar. Give me the folder, Carter said gently. The house was silent. Nora stood still. Sloane waited, eyes lowered just enough. And Bennett looked at the man he once trusted most in the world, the man who stood beside him at every success, every failure, every late night, every first deal, every close call. And he saw him clearly for the first time, not as a friend, but as the one who believed Bennett was only powerful if he allowed it. Bennett closed the folder. Not surrender, decision. He said quietly, "No." Carter's expression didn't change. Not surprised, not angry, just one thing: understanding. He stepped back. The next move would break everything. Everything in the room stilled. Not silent, still. The kind of stillness that happens when something has already shifted and everyone feels it, even before the consequences arrive. Carter's eyes didn't flicker. He didn't argue. He didn't plead. He simply understood. And that was worse. "All right," Carter said softly. "Then you've made your choice." He nodded to Sloane, the smallest gesture. One they had used 100 times in boardrooms, a signal to proceed. But this time, Sloane did not move. She looked at Bennett, really looked at him, and realized she had lost him, not because Nora replaced her, not because of the folder, not because of truth, because Bennett had finally seen the world without her script shaping the frame. For the first time, Sloane did not speak. Carter stepped back toward the doorway, exactly as the federal agents entered again, not rushed, not forceful, just inevitable. "Mr. Cole," the lead agent said, "we're asking you to come with us." Nora didn't try to stop anything. She simply reached out and rested her hand on the folder, not taking it, not hiding it, just making sure it didn't leave with the wrong person. Bennett breathed once, then spoke. "I'll come." The agent nodded. "But Carter," Carter smiled, not triumph, not confidence, recognition. "You just changed the story," Carter said. "You realize that?" Bennett met his gaze. "Yes," he said. "That's the point." Carter let out the slowest exhale. "Then it's going to be hell from here." Nora spoke for the first time since the agents walked in. It already was. They escorted Bennett toward the door, not in cuffs, not under force. Like a man walking toward a truth big enough to reshape him, Nora followed until the foyer. Sloane did not. She stood where she was, perfect posture, perfect stillness, and watched the life she had curated collapse in silence. Bennett paused at the threshold. He turned back to Nora. Not for closure, not for reassurance, simply acknowledgement. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't say be careful. She only said, "You didn't choose me. You chose the truth. That matters." He nodded once. A door closed behind him. The night air was cold. The world outside was waiting. Sirens in the distance, ocean winds, flashlights sweeping across the lawn. But for the first time in the entire story, Bennett's shoulders were not tense. He was no longer carrying a legacy he never agreed to carry. He was walking toward consequence, which meant, finally, he was walking toward freedom. If you were in his place, would you have opened the folder? Tell me in the comments. And if you want part 2, where the investigation begins, the alliances shift, and the real architects of Juniper step into the light, make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss what comes next.